So, yes, well, welcome to another session of System Thinking Certification Program. This week I'll be talking about Kumu relationship mapping. And the reason that I changed up the schedule was because last week Jeff Moore did a real nice overview of the capabilities of Kumu in a real broad brush, though not much time was spent. And I'm getting some feedback from someplace. Can you mute your mic until you want to talk so that I don't mute you, or I don't know, whatever. So I thought today I would actually spend some time and get a little bit more detailed about how you actually go about using Kumu to develop a relationship map, and hopefully provide you a sense of why I'm now sort of torn between two environments where I've spent the last 5 years doing relationship mapping in Insight Maker, and now when I get ready to develop a map, I sit there and say, well, do I build it in Insight Maker or do I build it in Kumu? And there are times when it's not an easy question to answer. Probably because I find Kumu more fluent than Insight Maker in terms of allowing me to put the relationship map together and the things that I can do with the pieces. They haven't yet implemented the storytelling feature, which they say they are going to do. And once they do that, it's probably going to be no longer a question that I have to ponder before I decide where to put it. And what I really, well, before I talk about that, when you create an account in Kumu, your username ends up being the part of the URL for every project that you create. The maps that you create in Kumu are essentially projects, so that if you look at this URL, it's kumu.io/STIA, which is one of my alter egos. It's one of my usernames in Kumu, and then the name of this particular project, the Systems Thinking Certification Program, is STCP. Once you create a project, you can have multiple maps within that project. Projects can be public or private, and they set up Kumu with the same model that Prezi has, so that you can create all of the public projects that you want for free. If you want a private project, you're going to have to pay for the right to do that. And you can migrate a project from public to private and back and forth as the need seems to be appropriate. So in terms of looking at this particular, your profile or your dashboard, these are all of the projects that I currently have, and some of them have multiple maps and some of them have single maps. And this is where you create new projects, and once you create the project, you end up essentially with a blank slate that you can develop the map on. And what I really like about what the developers have done to this point is that while Kumu is extremely powerful, one can become productive with it in about 10 minutes or less. Right? So that, I mean, a relationship map is simply a number of elements with relationships between them. So to add the first element, the only way that you can get it in there is to say I want to create an element, and that's it. Type it in and then hit enter. So you've created an element. And by default, notice over here that the elements are floating, connections are undirected, and there's a default perspective, but it's not selected at the moment. So you create maps or relationship maps out of elements, which are things, connections between those elements, and loops, which I'll show you once I get some elements and connections done. So that's the first one. I can create another one that's in the same way. All right, so I've created a second one, and notice that it's moving them apart because they're floating, and it's got some algorithm for positioning all the stuff on the map. If you're going, so there are times when you develop relationship maps, and having them float around is fine. Or you can also, once you select one, you can pin it in place so that it won't move anymore. So now that this one's pinned, when I move this one, the other one doesn't move. Okay, but that one moves because that one's not pinned. So if I pin that one also, select it, pin it. All right, now they're both pinned. You can come over here and you can select this, and you can tell it that you want the elements that you create to be fixed or essentially pinned in place once you create them. And you can define, well, in terms of adding connections to them. Why is that moving? I pinned them. I can select this. Maybe it wasn't pinned. Oh, I think it got unpinned. I can select this, and then I can say I want to add a connection, and I tell it what I want to connect to, and I tell it that I want to connect to sales, and it creates that connection. Now note that there's no indicator on this as to whether or not, or the direction of this connection. And sometimes I create relationship models, and I don't want to actually explicitly indicate a direction for the relationship between them, though if I do, I can select the connection, and I can say that it's directed. I can reverse it, or it can be mutual, so that there's one direction, not the rock group, but the arrow, and the other direction, and have them in both directions. So I'm going to do this one in directed and the other direction at the moment. And so that you can go ahead and set this up so that when you create them, they are directed or mutual, and I want them to be fixed. So now I have a relationship between marketing and sales, and essentially indicating, hold on. What's the matter here? Well, you're supposed to be able to take these and move this from one place to the other, and I don't know why that's not happening. I'll find out in a minute. So you're supposed to be able to reposition these, and though they're supposed to stay there because they're supposed to be pinned. What is the deal here? Oh, I had unpinned them not knowing what I was doing. All right, so now I can change the curvature. Now to connect this back to marketing, I can do the same thing, tell it add connection, or I can select this, hold down the Alt key, well, I can hold down the Alt key and simply do this. So I can simply draw them from one to the other. And I've essentially created a reinforcing loop, though I don't have any indicators on it. For the maps that you create, the map on a project, the map itself has a profile page, which you can edit the title. You can also edit the description, this, and all of the editing in the textual areas is all done in a language called Markdown, which is about the simplest formatting language that you can come up with. I mean, it's not like trying to understand HTML. It's real straightforward and very simple. You can do bold, italics, bulleted list, a numbered list. It's pretty straightforward. And then when it's done, now while this is the profile page for the map. Every item that you create as part of the map also has its own profile page. So that this is the profile page for marketing. This is the profile page for sales. This is the profile page for this link and for this link. So, and once you click on this, you can come up here and you can change the name. You can develop a description for that element. You can also apply types and one type. In other words, an entity can have a unique type, and you can add a set of tags to it if tags are appropriate for what you're doing. Tags are useful for styling the map or for searching for particular things in the map, or you can add additional attributes to the entities that you create if they're appropriate. And Jeff showed some of that last week. I mean, this is part of what makes it really powerful, but in terms of being really easy and straightforward, you don't have to worry about it. You just create the items. And to do an indication of direction or the meaning of the relationship, it's pretty close to the way that you do it in InsightMaker, in that this is the default name for this connection. But you can come in here and you can alter this and say and increases, so that if that default label is removed, then it puts whatever you label it on the influence itself. So marketing increases sales, and sales increases marketing. So we end up with a reinforcing structure. And you can also put the types on here, and you can call them plus the plus and minus types were defined by me because I simply typed them in here so that you can have as many types as is appropriate, though a type is, when you're trying to think about the difference between types and tags, a type is unique. Something can't be blue and green at the same time, so that the color of an item could be a type, or whether it's a person, place, or thing. Usually it's not 2 or 3 of those at the same time. So that if you're defining types, you want to pick something that's unique about the kinds of things that you're typing. So now I have essentially a reinforcing structure with the plus signs, and though I also want to put a label in this structure, so if you select multiple connections by holding down the shift key, I selected that one and then I select this one, notice that the add loop shows up, so that as many connections as you want to be part of the loop, you can select them by holding down the shift key, and once you get them selected, you can say add loop, and I'm going to call this R1 sales growth. So I now have an R1 sales growth loop which describes this particular loop, and it's really that easy. If I decided that I needed another piece to this puzzle, sales, I say sales. Let's do this. Sales has a negative influence on inventory. No, I'm sorry, this one, inventory. Notice that when I selected the item and went to type it, there's the types that I defined are for connections, but there are no types defined for elements at the moment. So sales has a negative impact on inventory, and inventory then has an impact on shipment, which is also probably positive. So if the more inventory I have, the more likely is that I can ship. And shipment has an influence on sales, which is probably shipment has a positive influence on sales, because if I don't have if my customers are waiting for items, they become less than happy and therefore tend not to buy so much. So then I can go ahead and select this one, hold the shift key and select this one and this one, and call this loop B2 shipping delivery. So this is a growth loop, and this is actually a limits to growth loop, so that if I exceed the capacity of production to actually create inventory and ship things, deliveries end up being off, and it offsets sales. So now I have two loops, a sales loop and a sales growth loop and a B2 delivery loop, and that's it's that easy. Any questions at this point? I guess I think Michael, you and Mike both have control over your mics, because I don't think I turned them off today.
No questions. This is very helpful. Thank you. No questions. This is very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Now, I said that you can have multiple maps. You could also have what's called perspectives. Perspectives are the way that you define, the way that what you create is styled. It's all of the fluff around it. So that, notice up here it says map, and here it says perspective. And here is where you define the perspective for this map. Every map has a default perspective, though you can have multiple different perspectives, and you can display the same set of data in different ways by changing the perspective that's applied to the map. Think about it the way that you have the surface of the Earth. You could define different types of maps that depict the territory. You could have one that shows elevations. You could have a road map that shows where all of the rest stops and things are. Or you can have a rainfall map. They're all maps. They're all different views of the same set of content, which is also true for Kumu, in that you can have multiple maps, but you have a single set of data, so that the same data could actually appear on different maps. There is the map that I defined on Tuesday when I did the session is here under relationship development. All right, so that it's a different map. It's a different reinforcing structure. And if I come over here and I tell it to add element, and I tell it to add sales, this is the sales item from the other map, so that you can have the same content on multiple maps, or it can only be on one map. And if I delete this from here, it's still on the other map. If I delete it from the other map, it's still sitting in the trash can, and I can call it back simply by referencing it, so that the content is very flexible in terms of the way that you use it. Though, what just happened was that it switched perspectives from because the relationship development uses this default perspective. The demo didn't have a default defined, so now I've defined this perspective to go with this map, and this perspective goes with this map. So the way that you use the perspectives is that you come in here, and there are guides to help you style the map in terms of decorating the elements and the connections. So I can tell it that I want to change, for all elements, I want to change the size of the elements, and I want to change them to 20, and I want to change the color of the elements to green. So when I save it, I've now colored the elements, and I can decorate the connections, and I can do all of the connections, or I can do a custom selection, and I can select the content based upon the description of the type or the ID or the label, or I mean, there's just an endless array of options, but I've currently typed them as plus or minus. So if I select the plus, I can change the color to for what plus to be blue, and I also want to change the size, and I want to make them 6.
So Gene, does it have a capability of doing we'll call it a style sheet, so that you could set it up and then whenever you apply it, that's what it is for your mapping? Or is there any kind of standard for a style so that people that are not familiar with a particular map that you've created can instantly understand the color and shape and that thing for that? Is there an opportunity here to create that standard?
Well, there's, for causal loop diagrams, the initial definition of causal loop diagrams was simply defining relationships to be either positive reinforcing or negative balancing. There were no colors associated with it. Long ago, I started using blue for the pluses and red for the negatives, and I actually should have selected the alternative so that the R and B went with the colors, but I wasn't that smart then at that point.
May not be too helpful for people that are colorblind, though, but that's okay.
Yeah. So, though currently, let me go ahead and go finish this decoration, and then I will go ahead and show you what happens by what I'm actually doing here. And the problem is I did this and then I didn't save it. Let's change the size. Then I want to change the color to blue, not that blue. And then I want to save it. Mouse is messing up. Why did it happen? Huh. Something. All right. What I was going to show you is that when you define these decorations, when you use these wizards or cribs or whatever you want to call them to set up and define them, what it's actually doing is it's creating a CSS file that looks like this, so that it's a definition of this is what happens to the element and this is what happens to the connection. And I've got 2 of them that are the same. And once a person gets familiar with this, you actually end up developing the CSS directly. And once you do, I have gotten to a point where I copy the CSSs from one map to another, so I reuse them. So while we have not done it at this point, we could in fact simply say, here's a library of some standard styles for different kinds of maps, and someone could just copy them and paste them into the map that they're developing, and I could actually go ahead and tell the developers that they ought to create a library of styles that people could simply choose from Is that something that you?
Yeah, that might be actually quite helpful.
Okay. Timo, I just turned your mic on in case you want to chime in. So now I don't quite understand at the moment why I went ahead. This is typed as plus. And I think I'm hearing some background from Timo. This is, and this one is typed as plus. Oh, come on. This one is typed as plus also. So I don't know what it is that I have messed up in terms of the loop type equals plus. It should change the size and the color, because that's the same way that I defined this one, and this one actually works. Oh, duh. Sorry. The good thing about software usually is that it does exactly what you tell it to do, even though you're not doing what you should be doing, because this is loop type and not connection type. I selected the wrong thing off of the list. So now that I defined the connection type, so if I go back here and define the other one and tell it that I want to define the connection type is negative and change the size to larger and make the color red. All right. So I've now defined the way that I want the connections to be styled, and I can also go in and tell it that I want to decorate the elements, and I want to change size, color, image, full shadow. Oh, that's not. Oh. The other part is that you can also tell it how you want to change the that's the size of the element, and I can tell it that I want the text size to be 30. I think I got that right. Text size. Sometimes I have to look at the help files, which actually is pretty good. So I mean, in terms of the simply going to the plus sign here, which gets you to this help, and this option gets you to their help file, which is very good. The CSS Property Reference tells you all of the things that you can govern in the CSS, and it's not text size, it's font size, which is why it's complaining. Which is probably why I go ahead and copy them from one to the other so that I don't have to look them up. I mean, once I establish a nice set of conventions, which is why, I mean, the comment that it's probably good to ask them to establish a sort of a library of some certain types of things, because once you selected from the library and embedded it, then you could go and alter it to the extent that you wanted to. If we go back and look at the Systems Thinking Certification Program itself, this map has a rather lengthy perspective that defines all of the things based upon the tags and the colors, so that it defines the colors for the legend and all of the pieces. Okay, so I mean, it's an extremely powerful capability in terms of styling it, and you can style the maps differently, so that on this particular map, I could style the plus connections to be green, which does not affect the way that the plus influences are styled on this map because they use different perspectives. Or I could take this map and restyle it by the other perspective, which automatically changes the way that it's styled. So in terms of a fluid set of options, the application is extremely deep in terms of capability, though to do something useful, I don't have to worry about all of those features. I can just go ahead and start creating a set of elements and connections and label them and produce a relationship map to help me sort out the things that are relevant with regard to the situation that I'm thinking about. And as I progress, I can begin to learn about styling it and the numerous other options that are available. Though they don't hit me in the face up front and demand that I learn about them to be productive. So that's one aspect. I mean, there's numerous pieces of software I've used over the years where I was pretty happy with version 1.0 and simply would have been happy with a couple of little tweaks to it. And by the time they got to version 4, I no longer wanted to use the software because they have overloaded the features and options to a point where it was more confusing than useful. And the developers of Kumu have not yet done that, and I have encouraged them not to do that. We'll see how it goes. Some questions? The other thing that the other option you can add is there's an option down here on the menu to indicate a delay if there is one. You can also, where I said that you could change the element font size, you can also select that, copy that, and add it to connection font size so that the font on the connections increases also, and you can govern the size and style of the loop text size also. And the other part is a part in here that's completely non-obvious, and that is, notice that when I mouse over this, it highlights this. Same with here. If I select this and hold it, notice that all I get is this loop. And then if I click and hold here, it adds this one. It allows you to do an unfolding piece by piece based upon the connections, the way which you may not have found a reason to do in the certification program content though. But if I hold on this, all I get is this piece. And if I click and hold here, it adds this piece. And then I can add this piece so that you can walk through a set of content based upon what you would like, what additional information you would like to see. I've asked them to add some kind of an indicator so that I can tell if there is additional connections to a particular element, because here I can't tell if there's another connection to one of these pieces or not. Some of them I remember because I actually developed the map, but for someone else who is first coming into contact with it, they wouldn't know whether there was a connection, additional information at certain elements or not. But it just, so the part about doing storytelling, which is almost fixed, there's one bug at the moment, and that is if I select this, all I get is this loop, and then if I select this, which is a loop reference, I get this, and this connection should not be here. because it's not the right type, and they've admitted that this is a bug and they have to get rid of this. So that what would happen was you would start here and you would read this description of the goal-seeking loop, and then when you click this is the next step, and it would show you the hindrance loop, which sort of impeded the progress. And then when you click here, you can see all of it, and that'll work pretty easily. Michael commented about most people don't change their background screen color even though they can. I'd have to look. I don't know if there's an option to change the background color in here or not.
That was hyperbole. It wasn't so much related back to the screen color specifically, is that just because you have the capability doesn't necessarily mean you're going to use it.
Yes, right. Some things are better not used.
And that's why I think standard style sheets would make it easier for people to be able to read maps that others have created.
Yes, and I don't know what I mean. I can see a standard style sheet for causal loop diagrams. Someone asked, and I also figured out how to do. Where was it? Let me see. If it's still in here. Dialog. Yeah, I figured out how to do dialog maps. If you know what those are, or IBIS maps, and the colors are the standard convention for IBIS maps. That would make a nice style sheet. So that and once someone selected that style sheet, I mean, they could go ahead and alter the sizing or things. I mean, it's not a long style sheet, but I'll go ahead and ask them about a standard set of style sheets. Anything else that comes to mind that you might have that might lend itself to a standard style sheet? Anything that comes to mind?
Not at the moment.
Okay. Well, if you do, send me a message. And as far as you, Michael, you also commented about a master data dictionary is created. Essentially, there's a master definition for the elements, the connections, and the loops. Let's see. I don't know.
But it's unique though to the specific logon that you have. There's not a one where you can take someone else's current state and it's universal. This is current state for everyone if you choose to do it that way.
Right. It's a set of definitions relevant to the project, and the perspective is relative to the map that you've applied it to. So, as I said, you can have multiple perspectives and multiple maps, and you can apply any of the perspectives to any of the maps, but each map has a default perspective that you have defined to be the default. So I could switch this and make this the default for both of these maps. And if you, as terms of where is it? Oh, come on.
So, Gene, I think the idea, though, is that the more maps you create, the richer the data dictionary would become, where you've got standard elements that you can pick from and reuse.
Right, because you can go, no, but it's not a global data set. The data set is relevant to the project, but for all of your projects, you can go back and pick bits and pieces from things that you've defined before. And I've also asked that they provide the ability for people to view other people's perspectives and profile pages. I mean, the way that I learned most of the HTML that I know is by recycling other people's code. So I said, well, this is neat, and I'd go look at the source to figure out how they did it, and go ahead and use that to do something I wanted to do. But in terms of, this is not actually meant to give you a migraine, but the stuff that Jeff McDonald is working on with regard to health and healthcare models, he has got a whole set of different maps and a whole set of different perspectives that demonstrate or present different segments of one set of content.
See, now something that's that complicated, it would be interesting to look at it when we talk about not the term perspective, but look at it as, is there a way to rotate it so that you can look at it from a different angle?
And I've worked with pieces of software that do that, though there isn't anything of that nature in Kumu at the moment.
Okay.
So where you take this set of data and you sort of, it's like a three-dimensional data set that you can spin around and look at from different directions.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. This is enough to give anybody a headache. And I I've worked with Jeff on it for quite some time, and he is probably the most prolific model developer I have ever met. He just and at the moment the task is to try and figure out how to get all of this content that he has developed over the years into some form that's actually digestible by a human. And at the moment, just because there's so much of it, it's just overwhelming. So he's figured out how to take segments of it and display the individual segments in a small, orderly fashion. And also, you can do imports and exports, so that here there's an export option which will export the entire map, or it will, if you select a whole bunch of stuff, it will just export the stuff that you select, which you can then import into another map. And when you import, it does not replace what's there unless it has the same name and type, so that you could have 3 different inventories that were typed differently, and you could import them all to the same place because the label and the type didn't match. So in other words, the way that Jeff managed to create all of those other maps was by selecting groupings of stuff and exporting it and importing it back into a different map, as opposed to duplicating that stuff over and over and over again. So my recommendation is take the Nike approach. Just do it. One can read books about riding a bicycle forever and not actually learn to ride a bicycle. It's something that you just have to get on it and do it. And though I understand that the blank sheet of paper is a difficult thing to overcome, and I had that difficulty for a long time when I first started developing causal loop diagrams or stock and flow simulation models. Sitting there looking at a blank piece of paper, being concerned about getting it right and starting in the right place, and finally, after years, realizing that you can't get it right the first time, and any place you start is the right place to start. Just do it. And because all the pieces are connected, and over time it will sort out as to what's the appropriate order to explain it to someone else once you finally get it on the paper. So just start developing the relationship model. And I mean, I still, I've worked on a model over and over and over again, I've found out that, okay, I really ought to sequence the loops because the story unfolds better if I tell it this way as opposed to the other way. And it's just an iterative process of learning through doing. I could think about it sort of endlessly and have it not get any clearer. It only gets clearer from trying to explicitly express it in some form that I want to offer to someone else. So that's why I keep saying, just follow the Nike approach. Just do it. So, Mike wants to know can you change your username in Kumu? Can you change your... I don't believe so. You can migrate content from belonging to one user to another user, though I don't think once you establish a username, if you want a different username, you have to go create a new username, and then you can migrate your content from one place to another. The first couple of usernames that I created in Kumu, I decided were not the usernames that I actually wanted to end up with, so that there are a few models laying around from history that are under usernames that I'm not using anymore, and most of the content has been migrated. Rich pictures in Kumu. Question from Mike. If I do this, well, why isn't that? Oh. Okay. If I go search for something, I look for banks, are what I always look for, because I hate banks. I don't hate them because they have all of my money, because I don't have any money. No, that's not good. I gotta really find an image. What is the deal here? All right, come on. Uh, this stuff all used to point to images. Is this clip art? Maybe clip art. View image. Okay, here's an image. So if I go find an image, I go here and I can type in the URL, and then I have an image. So to a certain extent, you can do rich pictures, Mike, but it's limited. You can go ahead and change the if I go to the perspective and change the size of the elements and make them 40. All right, so the pictures are bigger, and it's closer to being a rich picture. So I can decorate the elements with images, but they're image references, just like they are in SiteMaker. Attributes, tags, and types, are they defined? Yes. Mike asked about the definitions for types and tags, and so that in here, how to work with attributes. The attributes here, and the types and tags are here also. Buttons, keywords, JavaScript. Import, export, getting started, decorate. I don't know. It's here someplace. Show your selectors, decorate your map. I'll find it, Mike. And then Mike asks, is import in Kumu similar to cloning in IM? No, it's similar in that, take this map. If I just go here and say export, it generated an export, which is right there. And if I go here and tell it that I want a new map, and simply drag this on there, and then I have to tell it to save the changes. Notice what it's brought in is it brought in the elements, but it didn't bring in the perspective. If I go back to here, hold down the shift key and do an export. Notice it put out a different file type. So if I do another new map, and then I import this one, not only do I get the elements, the connections, and the loops, I also get the perspective definition so that I get all of it. What I don't get is this one. Is this it? Oh, I'm in the wrong place. Another. I thought I brought this in here. Save. Oh, that's right. It brought in the whole. Sorry. It renamed the thing on me. Where are they? I'm doing something wrong. I'm not sure what it is because it doesn't seem to be. Well, that one's in the right place. Why isn't this one another map? If I brought this in here and bring it in, import, start over, import ready, save changes. Okay. So this should be the new set of stuff that I just imported, unless, but what, for some reason it keeps shifting back to the other map. Maybe because it's identical. If I, let me go here. So I just now I created a new project that has no content. All right. So now notice here, this is my username and this is the name of the project, and this is that set of content with the perspective that all came in. It's all there.
So Gene, is this, I mean, the clone feature in Insight Maker is pretty cool because you can just take somebody else's work and then kind of start to play with it and then make it your own. Is this essentially the cloning? I mean, the cloning in Insight Maker is pretty easy.
Right. Well, the cloning here is also very easy. Let me see. What I never bothered to look at is I have to ask Jeff about this because you can't export somebody else's map, but you should be able to. Right? I mean, as long as it's public content, why shouldn't you, just like in Insight Maker, be able to come over here? I mean, this is a map that belongs to Jeff Moore. But when I come over here, I can't export this map, which is what I would need to do to get at all of the style sheets or the perspective. So, nice catch, Mike. Something I just never bothered to look at before, and should be there. Any other questions? So again, I would encourage you, just go spend some time with it and tinker with it. And if you have questions, ask. We'll figure out answers. And but I find in terms of an environment that readily allows me to present a set of relationships, it is much, I find that I can develop a relationship map in Kumu much more rapidly than I can do one in InsightMaker. Hope Scott's not listening. That, InsightMaker was initially developed to do simulation models, and we sort of contrived its ability to do other types of models. This is pretty fluid. So, okay. Thank you all, and we'll continue on next week. If you have any questions, post them on the discussion or send me email or something, and we'll figure out answers. Okay. Take care, all.
Thanks, Gene.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Okay, Gene. Thanks. Bye.